Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session on 3 easy steps to deploy a hybrid cloud with Azure. My name is Sahil Bansal, and I work as a senior product marketing manager at Nutanix. In this session, we will talk about the partnership between Nutanix and Microsoft and how it can help you build a hybrid cloud platform with Azure. I'm joined by my counterpart from the Microsoft team, Praveen. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sahil. Hi, everyone. My name is Praveen Kumar Kashim Seti. I'm a senior program manager working with Azure dedicated team as part of Azure. And I'm primarily focused on bringing Nutanix clusters on Azure solution to our customers.
Now, most of you are probably familiar with what hybrid clouds are and what benefits they bring to you. But the main thing that we want to emphasize is that just having an on-prem private cloud environment and a public cloud environment like Azure operating as two silos isn't really what we consider a hybrid cloud. In order to get the benefits of both the on-prem environment, such as predictable cost, high performance, greater control over your data center-based private cloud, as well as the Azure benefits of agility, elasticity, all the various Azure services, in a truly hybrid environment, you need seamless interoperability between both of those environments. That's what we believe is a true hybrid cloud. And that's what Nutanix and Azure bring together with running the Nutanix Cloud Platform on Azure dedicated infrastructure. For those of you that might not be familiar with what Nutanix is, we made our name in the industry as one of the pioneers of the hyperconverged infrastructure, which modernized your on-prem legacy three-tier architecture to a hyperconverged infrastructure-based architecture. And now we deliver the same thing on public clouds like Azure, where our entire stack, which we call the Nutanix Cloud Platform, brings in our core infrastructure capabilities along with management capabilities, a unified storage solution, databases solution, and desktop services, delivered for both your on-prem based private clouds as well as Azure environments. And the key things to know and understand about this hybrid cloud solution, which is where the hybrid cloud infrastructure is powered by running Nutanix clusters on Azure, is that this is a solution that truly keeps you in control. It's not a service, you are in charge of your infrastructure. It's the same Nutanix software, same Nutanix licenses that our customers are using in our on-prem environments that they can now run in their existing Azure accounts. And the main benefit, of course, being that with Nutanix running in both sides, on-prem as well as on Azure, you have complete seamless portability, easy migration without any refactoring, as well as getting all the benefits of our core hyperconverged infrastructure software, which is called AOS, which has its own built-in resiliency, efficiency, and high storage performance, while integrating with the various Azure services. So you get to use your existing Azure accounts, your existing Azure VNets and networking, and migrating your workloads without any refactoring and integrating them with Azure services. The main use cases that we see of our early customers that have deployed this hybrid cloud platform range from doing disaster recovery on the Azure region. Maybe you want a geographical separation between your primary data center and your secondary DR site. So that makes Azure a very attractive proposition for your DR site, as well as bursting on demand. Maybe you have some VDI images on-prem and you want to quickly spin up additional virtual desktops. You can easily migrate them from Nutanix on-prem to Nutanix on Azure and burst the nodes on Azure to add more capacity on demand. And lastly is accelerating your app migration from on-prem to Azure by eliminating the cost, the complexity of refactoring your workloads, a true seamless lift and shift. And it's not just the infrastructure that's part of this overall hybrid cloud platform. We also have a bunch of other offerings, such as our customers run various databases on the Nutanix Cloud Platform, both on-prem and in Azure. These databases include, but are not limited to, SQL Server, Postgres, and a bunch of other databases that we support, where you can either run them yourself, customer managed, or use our database as a service offering called Nutanix Era, which is a single platform to manage your databases on-prem and in Azure for everything, including provisioning, upgrading, cloning your databases, and backing them up. And one of the key benefits is that Nutanix offers seamless scalability by adding more nodes in this performance analysis done by ESG Enterprise Strategy Group. You can see that the number of transactions per second are increasing linearly, but the latency in the response time from the database remains pretty much constant. So you're able to scale up your database capacity without impacting the latency. So that really offers a lot of database performance benefits by running your databases on the Nutanix infrastructure. And we also offer a bunch of management capabilities that include AI-powered operations, self-service for your applications where you can create blueprints and users can deploy those blueprints in a self-service manner, cost governance and cost optimization capabilities, and security optimization, identifying the security posture and improving the security posture of your hybrid cloud environment on-prem or in Azure. Okay, now let's get right into it. We said 3 easy steps to deploy your hybrid cloud. So what are those steps? Well, step 1 is you will deploy the core Nutanix software, which I mentioned is called Nutanix AOS, on the Azure dedicated infrastructure. Step 2 will be integrating your on-prem environment with your Nutanix on Azure environment using our management plane, which we call Nutanix Prism. And step 3, migrate your workloads. No refactoring, no change to your application, easy migration from on-prem to Azure. Let's take a deeper look. So when you get access to this solution, which is currently in a preview phase, you will use our deployment portal to deploy an agent in your Azure environment. And this agent will be able to manage your Azure dedicated infrastructure, create the requisite networking, and manage the node placement across different racks in your Azure environment. Here's a small little screenshot showing that you will log into what we call the clusters, Nutanix clusters deployment portal, and that's where you configure your Azure account. And we saw this architecture diagram earlier, but wanted to give it a little bit more time. You can see that the Nutanix clusters on Azure environment in the middle of your screen is running on Azure dedicated infrastructure. So Azure brings in the hardware, Nutanix brings in the software, and we also automatically deploy the requisite networking using what we call the Nutanix Flow networking solution. There are certain gateway VMs that connect to your Nutanix clusters sitting in your Azure VNet, and you can configure them to your on-prem based private cloud environment using a VPN, using Azure Direct Connect, and that delivers a seamless connectivity between your Nutanix on-prem and Nutanix on Azure environment, while also being able to simply make API calls to connect to all of the Azure services that are accessible via your Azure VNet. So I mentioned that you can use your existing Azure accounts, Azure networking. You do have the option of either using your existing VNets, where you might have some public and private route tables already configured, where you have internet connectivity from that VNet to the external world. Or you can choose to deploy a new VNet through this clusters deployment portal, which will deploy the new route tables and load balancers and NAT gateway for you so that you can connect to the external world. And in order to do so, we use our solution called Nutanix Flow, which deploys the VPC networking. So you can see these steps as you go through the deployment process. You deploy our management plane called Nutanix Prism, and through which you can access the Flow networking. So connect your Azure account, pick an existing VNet, deploy the Nutanix management plane along with the Nutanix networking, and you're done. And in the last step, you pick your version of the Nutanix AOS software, which again is our hyperconverged infrastructure software. You pick the number of nodes, minimum number of nodes that we recommend for production use cases is 3 nodes, maximum of 16 nodes. And you decide if you want to give outbound access to the Prism management plane, or you want to restrict that to certain IP addresses. That's the last step. You hit deploy, and your Nutanix environment will be up and running on the Azure dedicated infrastructure. With that, you get access to our management plane, which, as I mentioned, is called Nutanix Prism. You can use the same Prism management plane to manage your Nutanix infrastructure anywhere, on-prem or on Azure. This brings a huge benefit of being able to use the same tooling, same policies, same practices that across both different environments, on-prem as well as in Azure. You can use this management plane for all of your virtual machines, containers, storage, networking and security setup, app deployment, cost management, the full set of capabilities needed to deploy your apps in a hybrid cloud. And last step is migrating your workloads. That's what a hybrid cloud aims to deliver, a seamless platform where you can truly take your workloads, existing workloads on-prem, move them to Azure without any refactoring, without any retooling. So that's what this overall hybrid cloud platform helps you do, bursting your capacity on demand on the Azure infrastructure as well. And you can use this for DR, you can use this to migrate your apps permanently. You don't really need Nutanix on-prem in order to run Nutanix on Azure, but of course, having Nutanix on both sides delivers a true seamless experience. Now, enough talking. Praveen, why don't we show our audience how this works in a live demo?
All right, let's jump right into the demo. Let's show you how this hybrid cloud will work. First, I log into my Nutanix console and launch the clusters deployment portal. The first step is to configure my Azure account um, in the clusters portal. We'll select Azure as the cloud type here, and we'll have a Azure Active Directory app created that will allow clusters portal to manage the infrastructure. We'll start with entering the app ID, directory ID, secret key, and subscription ID, then select the region that we want to deploy the cluster in. So this completes the Azure account configuration. Now let's go ahead and deploy a cluster with Nutanix HCI software running on the Azure hardware nodes. We'll start by giving a descriptive name to the cluster, select the Azure account we configured, and also select the region where we want to deploy this Nutanix cluster in. Next, we select the resource group, an Azure VNet, and a management subnet with an ad gateway to select where Azure nodes will reside. Here, we have 3 nodes selected for the cluster, but you can have a number of nodes higher as well, up to 16. Then we select the AOS version and the tier, followed by validating the details of the cluster that we are creating. See, that's how easy it is to run a Nutanix on Azure nodes. You can see that the 3 Azure nodes are being provisioned for the cluster, and AOS, AHV, and Prism Element are being installed in that cluster. The cluster deployment typically takes about 45 to 60 minutes. And once the deployment is finished, you'll see the cluster state from changing from creating to active, and the nodes from provisioning to running state. So let's launch the Prism element for this cluster. Here, you can see the Prism element running on the Azure cluster. And we have created and added an Azure subnet of a Prism Central that will manage this Prism element. Here, you can see the virtual machines for the Prism Central that is managing the Azure cluster. So let's go back to the Azure cluster, and if you want to manage this cluster with a different Prism Central, you can also do that by just entering the Prism Central IP and credentials. You can manage basically an entire Nutanix infrastructure on-premise as well as an Azure-based infrastructure through this common Prism Central, which becomes a single pane of management for an administrator. Now, next, let's use Nutanix Move to migrate VMs from an existing ESXi on-premise cluster to AHV-based Azure cluster that we just created. We'll start by creating a migration plan. Give it a name. Select the source as your on-prem cluster, and the target as the Azure cluster so that you can easily migrate VMs from on-prem to Azure. Now let's select the on-prem VMs that we want to migrate. We select three VMs running web app, and we'll also select a VM that is running SQL. Next, we will specify the target network for the VMs with the Azure subnet where Prism Central is currently running. Move will check the available capacity in the target cluster even before starting the migration of these VMs. The key thing to remember here is that it is a complete lift and shift of your VMs. No refactoring or app level changes are required. You can specify additional options in the move if you want to, like retain IP addresses after migration or schedule seeding for a future time, or just start right away. Let's go ahead directly here. The actual migration can take several hours depending on the size of your VMs. Here we see Move is seeding the data on the target cluster, which is the Azure. All right, see that basically is powering on these VMs on the target cluster, which is in Azure. And now you will see those target VMs running on the Azure nodes here.
Now let's look at the availability of Nutanix clusters on Azure in various Azure regions. As part of preview, we will be supporting East US and West US, where customers can consume Nutanix clusters on Azure solution and deploy Nutanix clusters. But as we move into GA period, we will have 6 more regions lit up across the globe. A couple of regions in Asia Pac, a couple of regions in Europe, and a couple of added regions in US. We will have a single node type to start with, but as we roll into GA, we'll have more node types that will come for consumption. Now let's look into Nutanix Karbon. So what is Nutanix Karbon? Nutanix Karbon is an enterprise Kubernetes management solution that enables a vanilla Kubernetes distro of customer's choice to be deployed onto Nutanix clusters in the on-premise environment. Its primary benefits of using Nutanix Karbon is with Nutanix Karbon, you will be able to deploy production-ready clusters on on-premise environments in less than 20 minutes, and you can perform all the operations as if you were operating these Kubernetes clusters in a cloud environment. Moreover, it will deliver you an integrated solution with a persistent block and file storage system. Now let's look into what Microsoft has done with Nutanix. In partnership, we have enabled Azure Arc to manage Kubernetes clusters that are running on-premise using the Karbon. As you all know, Azure Arc enables a seamless management experience of your systems across cloud and on-prem infrastructure, one alike. Now, with Arc-enabled Kubernetes on Nutanix, you will be able to use the goodness of services like Azure Monitor or Azure Policy to manage and monitor the Kubernetes clusters that you're running on your on-premise environments and cloud together with a single pane of glass. At the same time, you will be able to use Arc for deploying your applications to GitHub repos and attach these repos to your clusters using GitOps for seamless deployment and scaling up and deployment into multiple instances of Kubernetes clusters within seconds. The other integration that Microsoft has worked with Nutanix on is integrating Azure Arc-enabled data services platform with Nutanix clusters. With this integration, customers will be able to manage their on-premise SQL deployments like Azure SQL or Microsoft SQL Server or even PostgreSQL and manage them through a common management experience using Azure Arc. So you not only will be able to deploy, but also publish policies that are known in the cloud world, and also secure your deployments in the on-premise using the benefits that are being provided by the Azure Security Center and Azure Security Services. Now let me hand it over to Sahil, who will walk you through the rest of the content and also let you know what it costs for you to get your Nutanix clusters on Azure, and also how do you provision them going forward. Sahil?
Thanks, Praveen. Thanks for that great insight into how Nutanix and Azure are collaborating closely. So Praveen mentioned about the consumption models. This is a hybrid cloud solution. So you pay for the Azure hardware as well as the Nutanix software. Those two different payment models, you will be able to either make them through the Azure Marketplace once the solution is available on the marketplace, which we expect to happen sometime in the first half of calendar year 2022, or you can decouple the two payment methods, use your existing ELAs, existing agreements with Azure to pay for your data dedicated infrastructure in an on-demand fashion or in a reservation-based fashion. And then to the Nutanix software, you pay to Nutanix, which also again has a couple of different options for you: pay as you go or reservation-based, what we call cloud commit. So you commit to a certain amount to run on Azure. That's your commitment amount. For customers that are existing Nutanix on-prem customers, you can use your CBL licenses and use those CBL licenses on Azure. So that's what we call BYOL. And the advantage of that is there is complete license portability across your Nutanix environments. That makes it super easy to adopt this solution. If you have a Nutanix license, wherever your workload needs to reside, on-prem or in Azure, that's where you migrate your license as well. Allows you to make better use of your business investment in Nutanix. And that's it. Thank you for joining us in this session. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about the Nutanix and Azure hybrid cloud solution. Remember, it's currently in preview. We are aiming for GA in the first half of calendar year 2022. But today you can sign up for a preview. You can visit our website nutanix.com/Microsoft, register your interest for preview access. We'll reach out to you. In addition to that, you can take a self-guided test drive, which gives you a hands-on experience of what this hybrid cloud solution looks like and how it makes it super easy for you to migrate your apps from on-prem to Azure. It's a self-guided tour of a pre-canned environment. There is no cost to you. Visit nutanix.com/Microsoft to take the test drive or register your interest for the preview access of Nutanix clusters on Azure. That's it. It's been a pleasure. Praveen, any last words for our audience?
No, we are super excited for you to test out our solution Nutanix clusters on Azure, and do give us feedback. Thank you so much.